I'm sorry, guys.
Good evening, everyone. If I can ask everyone to take their seats, please. Good evening again, and thank you for being here. My name is Carlos Suarez, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Omni CRA. Our focus here at the Omni is on investing in core infrastructure, supporting local businesses, advancing affordable housing opportunities, and helping restore the sense and character of the neighborhood while honoring its history and its residents. We're especially grateful to be hosting tonight's event here at the Miami Women's Club building, a historic landmark that we at the Omni CRA helped restore and return to active community use. I also want to let everyone know that members of my team are stationed in the back, and if you have any questions or would like additional information on what we do here at the Omni, please ask, and all over our social channels, and you can sign up there and we'll sign you up. But at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our Omni CRA Chairman and District 2 Commissioner, Damian Pardo.
Turn it on? Oh, wow. Oh, do you hear me? Yes. Maybe turn it off. That way this is away from me.
Yeah.
You all can hear me well?
Yes.
Good. Excellent. First of all, Happy New Year. And I'm glad we're all together on this kind of frosty evening. I'm glad everybody's here. We've been really, really excited in our office, and there's so much in front of us, and there's so much that we have been doing. And part of the message we try everyone to understand is that we really need you and your participation in every single thing we do. If you follow us on Instagram, that's Damian Pardo Miami. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, just send an email to district2@miami.gov. Just so you know, we do a review of every commission meeting agenda a couple of days before that meeting, and about 5 days before every meeting, we send out a 1-minute highlight. So we basically say, hey, Bayfront Park is on this agenda, this is on this agenda, and it's just to get you interested in the topic enough to go to the agenda or to listen to the review. So we've very much been about engaging residents in this process and being able to work collaboratively. We have a lot of talented staff, and at the same time, I don't think we've done a particularly good job of communicating what we know to our residents. So there are a lot of gaps that exist there. And that's why we've been very committed, as much as we can, to really being able to communicate. This is an amazing time for reform in the city of Miami. I'd say about 2 years ago, we got a couple of new commissioners. Now we basically have an entirely new dais, plus a new mayor, which we're very happy about, and we have a new city manager. So you couldn't pick a better time to access our office or access the city and work jointly, collaboratively together. With that said, I do want to mention and introduce Rick Madan, who's been a great example of collaboration with our office and with the community, and I know you want to say a few words.
Yeah.
Can't have two mics next to each other. And I thought technology had gone beyond that. I guess not. Good evening and welcome. How are we doing tonight?
Good.
All right, so again, for those of you who might not know me, as the Commissioner said, I'm Rick Madan, President of the Biscayne Neighborhoods Association. I want to start out by thanking Carlos for those welcoming remarks. We truly appreciate CRA's collaboration and partnership, and in addition, I want to thank the Women's Club for hosting us this evening, because without you, we couldn't be having this event here. So thank you to both of you. Let's give them a hand. Obviously, having the commissioner out here is great, and thank you for being here. And also, besides the venue and all of you folks being out here tonight. Without our sponsors, we couldn't really run the event. There are expenses that go with every event. So you can see our sponsors over there, USI, Omni CRA, Haber. Thank you to all three of you for supporting the Biscayne Neighborhoods Association. Appreciate your help. So it's great to see so many neighbors coming together for our community, because as Tricia said, it's a chilly night, and you guys came out, so thank you for coming out. And tonight, from the B&A perspective, we want to make it about reflection and direction. So reflection, kind of what we did, direction, what we see in 2026. So we exist, the Biscayne Neighborhood Association exists to advocate for residents. And the idea is we want to protect the quality and character of our community. And by the way, our work is driven by resident input. You know, we run surveys, and that's where we get feedback. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be talking about a survey that's currently running, and hoping a lot of you have already filled it out. If not, we'll give you an opportunity to fill it out, because we're not closing it out yet. And so much of what we accomplished over the past year reflects strongly on community involvement and productive dialogue with city leaders and partners. So with that context, I'd like to walk you through where we've been, where we are today, and where we're headed. So let's begin with some of our priorities. I mean, and you know,
No.
I'm sorry, this is the Omni CRA slide, so we're supposed to put that out there. But here's our priorities, right? And again, these items came about because of feedback from neighbors, residents of Edgewater, from a survey that we had run last year. That's where this stuff comes from. It doesn't come from the B&A, it's people responding and saying, hey, ranking the items. So that's where this came from. And also, I just want to quickly recognize our team, because, you know, this is a multi-person production, and without the team members of the B&A, we couldn't do a lot of the work that we do. So thank you to Marcos, Jeff, Patricia, Anna, Paula, Aaron, and I don't think Michael's here today, but let's give them a round of applause. And also, you know, our membership has grown because people like being part of the B&A. So you can see the buildings in Edgewater that are members of the B&A. We have quite a few commercial members, and we had some what we call institutional members wanted to join us in 2025. So obviously the Omni CRA, the Adrian Arts Center, that's where we held the mural debate. They are members of the B&A now. The DDA. And then, you know, I was pleasantly surprised with the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce when they said, hey, you're one of the neighborhood organizations that we would like to be part of. So they're part of us as well. 25, quick recap. I mean, you know, Morgan Place Park, I wanted that out first because if you think about Edgewater, Morgan Place Park is like the jewel of Edgewater, in my opinion. And tonight we're fortunate that we're going to get an update on what's going on. With the park, we have people from the park, we have people from the consultants that were hired by the city to talk to us about where it stands. And again, you know, the nice thing is we'll have Q&A at the end because we have multiple speakers tonight, so if you would hold your questions till the end. Everybody's going to be here, every speaker, so you will have an opportunity to ask them questions. Also events, I mean, we try to do events that we think are important to the community, like cleanups. We do a quarterly cleanup. Some educational programs that bring people together. And you know, one of the questions that we ask on the survey is how do you want to be communicated to? Right? Some people like emails. Some people want postings on WhatsApp. Some people look at Instagram. So these are all the things I'm learning, right? Because I wasn't good at any of these. I was good at emails, but I wasn't good at posting and Instagram. But I'm learning that stuff. Luckily, there are other people who know that stuff better than I do. Advocacy, right? Civic advocacy. One of the things that we try to do is go to every commission meeting, right? And as good advocates, we have our good friend Elvis here. We see him at the commission meetings because You know, that's the way to address the commission, and hopefully our new mayor will be there as well, so we can address her. But safety and infrastructure, obviously, you know, traffic is coming up big. And public engagement, by being able to hold the mayoral debate at the Art Center was a big deal. It was televised live on NBC TV. You know, the 4 top candidates came, and you know, and not only that, we had made all the 4 candidates available to all the buildings in Edgewater. So whatever buildings took us up on it, we were able to connect the candidates before the election with the person in the building, so they can invite their residents and get to meet the candidates as well, because I think it's important if you're going to vote for someone, you want to get to know them as well as you can. And one of the things with voting is we really pushed hard for it, because, you know, think of it from the elected official side, whoever that person might be, they look at who's voting for them, right? And I want Edgewater to stand out. I want people in Edgewater to vote. And that's one of the things we pushed really hard for. We put out as much as we possibly could. We did voter registration. And you can see our votes went up by 69% compared to the last election. That's a big jump just in Edgewater. And by the way, we have room for another 65-9% increase, because although that number is great, you know, the percentage of registered voters that actually go out and vote is very low, even in Edgewater. So if we want our voices to be heard, that's probably the loudest noise you can make is by voting, right? And you can see, even for the mayor, Eileen Higgins, 74% of Edgewater voted for her, where 59% citywide voted for her, so she had a much higher percentage from residents of Edgewater. There's the survey. If you have your phones out, if you haven't done the survey, please, because more of you that respond to us and saying, hey, this is important to us, and it only takes you like 2-3 minutes. It's not a long survey, but it basically allows us to say, hey, this is what we got, right? This is, and to give you an idea, the survey we ran last year, we had over 600 people respond. Yeah, that's a pretty big number. I'd love to beat that number. So, right now, we're going to keep the survey open. Aaron, we're going to keep the survey open. And please, so the survey, I think we started about 2 weeks ago, roughly, 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. So this is what's trending on the survey right now. This is what's important to people, what people are sharing with us. And it's in the order, by the way, based on the responses. So public safety, traffic is trending the highest. Infrastructure, right? Obviously flooding, homelessness, is it parks and green space, completion of the day walk, and so forth and so on. So please, if you do get a chance, here's a QR code again, or sorry, after this one. So traffic, because we allow, we have a question where you can make comments, right? So if you want to say something that's not on the survey, you can make a comment on it. So this thing, traffic, I guess, was the biggest thing, and then you can see the other things that people are writing down that concerns them, that we say, okay, you know, these are the things that we have to focus on. So there's a QR code again, if you haven't done the survey. 26, we'll be doing a safety meeting with our local police. You know, Commander Delgado was here tonight. He's been amazing for Edgewater. I mean, he can tell you, since he took over as the commander for Edgewater, the crime rates have gone down in Edgewater. Like, these are statistics. I've even spoken to the chief of police, Randy Morales, who tells me, yes, you guys are doing very good in Edgewater as far as crime is concerned in all over Miami. In April, we hope to talk about insurance with you. Insurance is something that every condo, right? The trend was this. Now the trend, by the way, is this on insurance. And I hope that trend continues, since we didn't really have any hurricanes in the season. So let's see, but, you know, hopefully there's board members out there, property managers out there. The rates that you should be renewing should be a lot lower right now. But just in case there is a hurricane, we'll prepare you in there, right? Just in case. So we will run a meeting on that. And we love doing the summer kickoff. I never knew the first first time we did this meeting, I didn't know there was that many kids in Edgewater. Like the little ones. There's a lot, which is great. That means there's a lot of families in Edgewater. So we do a summer kickoff as soon as the kids get out of school, and we have fun. Where else at Marketplace Park? Right? The kids come out there. Also, again, you're going to hear from one of our sponsors soon. You heard from CRA, and then the third sponsor is USI. So one of the things, I'm just using him as an example, one of the things BNA does is we do podcasts. We have a YouTube channel. And you can watch podcasts on different topics, so if you can't make it. So there's a podcast with Lorenzo from USI on the current state of the insurance market. They're not long, they're like 20 minutes roughly usually. But we've done one with Haber Law that we'll be putting out soon. We've done with one engineering firm, Stockton Group. So we do these podcasts if you are interested in watching them. So now, without further ado, David is going to come up, but first I'm going to turn it back to the commissioner because he's going to talk about a few other things. So you want David to talk first?
David can go first.
David can go first. So please, let's welcome David Podein from Haber Law to give us a legislative update.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, here we go. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Great. David Podein from Haber Law. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you to DNA and the leadership team, our elected officials, and many city employees that are here as well. We really appreciate it. I promise to keep it relatively short. We've got a lot of speakers tonight. We've got a decent amount of stuff to cover. They've asked me to give the legislative update. And we have HB 913. HB 913 is also referred to as Condo 4.0. This is the latest iteration of condominium legislative updates. We have the tragedy of Surfside, which I'm sure everyone in this room is aware of. And initially the legislature had a session right after Surfside, and there was no legislative changes. No increased safety protocols, funding, governance, nothing happened in that initial session. And understandably so, there was a lot of outrage from Florida residents saying, how could that have happened? What are we doing with the laws? So HB 913, which was enacted in July of last year, and now is in the implementation phase, and condos are living with it, is sort of the fourth iteration of this new wave of condo legislation. The overarching goals are to modernize condominium governance, which will give you some specific examples of expand digital compliance with e-voting and Zoom meetings and recordings, as well as they've introduced some flexible standards around the structural integrity reserve study and the funding associated with that SIRS study. There was a lot of chatter in the community and the condo professionals about, are some of these inspection deadlines going to get pushed back? Are these SIRS studies deadlines going to be pushed back? A lot of people, even some buildings I work with, they really expected the legislature to push these things out a lot farther, or it didn't really sink in with some condo associations. But the legislature through HB 913, for the most part, said these requirements are here to stay, with a little practical flexibility, which we'll get into. First, one of the items that they added was enhanced conflict of interest disclosures. Now, with the new condo environment, you have nearly every high-rise building doing more and more projects, more and more contracts, and there's a lot of money at stake. So one of the things the legislature did was more intensely codify the conflict of interest statute and make it clear that if the management company or any board has a conflict of interest, not only does it need to be brought up, previously it wasn't clear of how it would be brought up at a meeting, brought up generally. Now it's been codified that the actual contract, the terms, everything needs to be disclosed and then voted on by the membership. And I think you'll see this come up in terms of even with sometimes management companies or other providers amongst themselves have referral fees or different things like that, which I think you're really going to see come to light and get voted on or voted down. Next is on the milestone inspections. This is one of the big things to come out from post-Surfside. They didn't push back, it's still generally every 30 years and 10 years thereafter, subject to which county you're in or where you are on the coast. But one thing that they clarified, maybe for some of the smaller buildings in this neighborhood is important, was it said 3 stories, and everyone said, well, what does that mean? Is it, we have a 2-story building, 3-story parking garage, do we apply? So they clarified that was a big glitch that was hanging over the condo legislation for a bit. So they clarified that it needs to be 3 habitable stories. So if you have a smaller building with a large parking garage, then you get the clarification there. So moving to what I said, the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, also known as SIRS, had a couple of important updates. One of the main ones was for the SIRS items you have to reserve for, they increased the floor there, which previously was a $10,000 item. They said, okay, it needs to be at least $25,000 item as adjusted for inflation. One of the deadlines they did push back, which many buildings are not compliant with, they did push back the deadline to have your SIRS reserve study completed, which last summer they pushed it back to the end of the year. Not as long as a lot of buildings, management firms, and attorneys had hoped for, but there was a little relief there. One of the larger sort of reliefs the legislature provided to the condo community was on allowing buildings to delay their reserve funding for up to 2 years after they've completed their milestone inspection. And this made a lot of sense because buildings had to go up and get your milestone inspection to say what is going on with the building, what's the status of the building, get it recertified. And that milestone inspection would say, you need to fix X, Y, and Z. So the legislature said, let's give them some flexibility while you're actually doing these repairs revealed by your milestone inspection. Will allow you to pause putting money into your structural integrity reserves. So you weren't having to pay into 2 buckets at the same time. So I think this was very practical to allow, hey, we're going through the process, we've got our big milestone inspection done, we know what we need to fix, we're going to contribute funds towards doing those fixes, and then we'll go back and get an updated reserve study completed that shows a longer useful life items, and then we can start funding those items. So we're not paying into both of those buckets at the same time. Another important clarification was, and this has come up a lot the last couple months with budget season, is you have to make sure the budget you adopt ties in with if you're doing SIRS funding, and which we'll get into some of the specifics on it, which one of the things they allow now is you can pull a line of credit and have that ready. So instead of actually funding into the reserve account, you can have the amount of money needed for your reserves via a line of credit. So on milestone and SIRS and the interplay, the strict timelines are still there. Those were not wiped out. Those were not pushed back in any kind of major way. And it's really important for buildings to work with their management team and accounting because it starts to get complicated with how your budget ties in with, are you waiving, have you pulled a line of credit, are you funding it through the budget? Next, something many people say didn't really need clarification, has a whole host of clarifications now. As I'm sure you all experienced living in your buildings if you were there during COVID, everyone sort of quickly adopted to having board meetings via Zoom. It was never officially codified in the statute, but everyone was doing it. If you ask anyone kind of working in space, it seemed to work just fine. Now they've clarified that if you're going to do a meeting via Zoom or other video recording, you need to still have a physical location for that meeting, in the lobby, in the meeting room, in the common element room, and you need to have a telephone dialer. This seems like one of the more minor items that they've made a little bit more complicated, and it's important to be aware of because these things start to trip up associations. Of equal importance, in which we get a lot of pushback from our managers and board, is if you're going to have a Zoom meeting or other video conference meeting, it needs to be recorded, which is something, please say, not sure this is really beneficial to the open discussion. Is it going to cause kind of a chilling effect on people being able to speak freely? On the other hand, many people say, like, what do people have to hide? We record the meeting. It's association business. E-voting. So continuing the trend I alluded to about more digital aspects to condominium life. You have many associations where the board previously, under the old statute, it was up to the board to propose to the members. hey, we're gonna adopt e-voting. We can vote electronically and not have to turn in your physical proxy or mail it in. And you had a lot of associations via the board that said, we sort of like how the building's voting, we like the level of minimal or high participation we have, we're not gonna rock the boat and adopt e-voting. Well, the legislature listened to the people that didn't like it. And so 25% of the unit owners can petition the association to force in electronic voting. And something that's causing a little confusion, even if your building doesn't have that and it's not adopted, you can still electronically submit via email your ballot for the election. Another item that was updated that a lot of people didn't see coming was on budgets. As Rick talked about, insurance was a big issue for a while, pushing budgets up and up. Now obviously we have capital repair projects, we have reserves that need to be funded. Now, if the budget is going to exceed the prior one by 15%, the association has to propose an alternative budget excluding discretionary items. Now, this is one of the items where in the community, people say, well, what are the discretionary items? Is it maybe the holiday party? Is it maybe some bonuses for staff that the association pays for? This is one of the items people kind of scratch their head and say, where does this come from on the legislation? But it's here, and so we have to deal with it. Another helpful item that was provided for association is on these mandatory SERS reserves. They clarified, which was not clear in the prior statute, that you can pool these together. What does that mean? Typically, when you budget for reserves, it needs to be line item. You're going to put this much away for the roof, this much away for the painting, this much away for the elevators. But now, on these SERS, these structural specific reserves, you're allowed to do a pooled method where you say, okay, of these 7 structural reserves, the total amount is this, and then you have flexibility as an association to spend amongst that pool as opposed to the very strict line item where you were bound by. This is a big one that I'm seeing almost every week now. I alluded to it earlier on funding. Associations, they clarify the legislature. Associations may secure loans or lines of credit to pay for milestone inspection, for funding reserves, and their SERS obligations. This is a really important one that's tying in with budget season, and make sure you work with not only your management team, accounting, and legal counsel, but it's really important that the associations, you work with banks in the community association lending space. I see it all the time where maybe someone on the board says, oh, I know someone at this national bank, you've got a good relationship, they're going to give us the best rate. But this is a specialized lending product, and for anyone that's in the real estate industry who's been through this, it's totally different. The bank doesn't take a mortgage on the condominium association. It's a whole separate process. And I think this is one I would really recommend to the directors in the room. Make sure you're working with the banks here in South Florida that focus on this specific type of lending. As we hinted at earlier, this is a big one. This is a temporary pause on SERS reserve funding. So this is, again, if you've done the milestone inspection and you know what you need to do, this allows you to pause that SERS reserve funding, which was an additional big strain on a lot of budgets for up to 2 years. So takeaways, as I said, it's increasing transparency in digital compliance, through e-voting, recordings, conflict of interest disclosures. We did get a little bit of flexibility on doing your milestone and intention of also having to fund those reserves. We also got a little bit of flexibility on pushing the SERS back, as well as being able to pause it for 2 years. They clarified the procedures on virtual governance, and they've updated the standards. So there's a lot more that was in HB 913. I'd be happy to send. I have an even longer presentation, which is our accredited course that we give to CAMs. Board of directors and professionals find it helpful as well. Be happy to send that around to anyone that'd like a copy of it, which is a much more detailed presentation. But that's kind of the executive overview of HB 913, Condo Bill 4.0. Thank you all so much.
We need to get off and stay on.
Okay.
All right. So I really want to thank a very heartfelt thanks to our City of Miami staff CRA staff, our City of Miami police that are all here, but especially one person, and that would be Bradley Mills, who is the liaison for the Edgewater community. So, and for those of you who enjoy the farmers market, we can thank a lot of his hard work that went behind it. I was told to talk a little bit about our office priorities and things that have happened. For our office, the number one thing when we looked at what we wanted to do in the City of Miami was reform. So we really pushed the Office of the Inspector General. That was passed, it went to the ballot, it was passed by voters, but it is now active and staffed. And so if you have issues with the City of Miami, there's an independent arm that doesn't have to do with the commission, doesn't have to do with the mayor's office, that can accept anonymous complaints. So we're very happy that reform made it all the way through. Then we also pushed lifetime term limits. That went to the ballot, it was passed by voters by an overwhelming 79%. So now we have retroactive lifetime term limits, which means that a commissioner can serve for 8 years and you're done for life. A mayor can serve for 8 years and you're done for life. If you want both positions, you can do that. That's 16 years, but you're done for life. You can't come back at any other time. Other priorities for us was infrastructure. Our district has the coastline of the City of Miami. That scares me, personally. We haven't had a hurricane. We haven't had any kind of significant weather event, and yet we flood, and we flood a lot. And why is that the case? We have a stormwater master plan that's costed, the cost value on that is $4 billion. We have only taken care of 10% of that, $400 billion. Now keep in mind, people don't want higher taxes. Right? So this is all friction about trying to really take care of ourselves, especially when it comes to some of these issues. We are in a bad place when it comes to infrastructure. In the last agenda, we put forward a bond item, which was basically telling the city, let's start working on a bond that can help fill some of these gaps in some of these projects. So we're very much concerned and very much trying to fund infrastructure. With affordable housing, we were able to get the extension of life of Omni CRA, which prior to our administration had not been able to be achieved for 7 years. So not only were we able to extend the life of the CRA, we now have a $150 million bond out there specifically for affordable housing and infrastructure, which is key. The last thing I'll say, thanks to our chief of police, Manny Morales, all of the commanders, and all of the police, we now have an eastern district all along our coast, which includes Brickell, Edgewater, and downtown. And I worked very closely with the chief on making sure that in this area, we would have foot patrols, bikes, horses, ATVs, very people-touched kind of policing, very emphasis on community policing. Because in vertical communities, you have a different need. You need to know that you can walk outside and you can feel safe and you can say help and somebody's there. So we're very thrilled that we were able to accomplish all of that, because while it sounds easy, creating a new district is really difficult. It involves everything from radios and the way communication happens and the way staffing happens. So we've been incredibly happy about that. About 8 months ago, we decided that one of the challenges in Edgewater is that there's no identity. Like we felt really bad, because when you look, it's all construction, it's traffic, it's all of this thing is happening, but there's no well thought out system that kind of tries to integrate something into a neighborhood character that people can agree upon. So we funded an Edgewater neighborhood master plan study, which will be done by Proserbia, and I'm going to read you the scope of work, because it's very technical, but I think it's very inclusive of what we're trying to do. The plan prioritizes safety, walkability, and accessibility, strengthens Edgewater's identity, and improves connections to Wynwood, Midtown, and surrounding areas. It also prepares the neighborhood for future transit investment, enduring Edgewater growth in a coordinated, resilient, and people-focused way. So this company will be coming to you. This is about engaging you. And they will be including meetings like this, where you sit at the table and you have conversations and you talk about what your neighborhood is, what it means to you, and how does that translate into crosswalks and signs and lights and lighting and everything else. So we're excited about that project. We recently passed the Edgewater Resilience Trust Fund. And I know there's been a lot of interest on that. We've had inquiries in our office. I want you to know that this is a project that came from the Edgewater community to our office. It did not come from a developer. It wasn't ever development driven. It was about 20 property owners in Edgewater that had been there decades that had issues with the fact that they could not tap into a density tool and trap it in Edgewater for their own needs, whether it was the Baywalk or infrastructure. Now this can get very much in the weeds, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's other staff people that will talk about it. I will be here after. We're always happy to send you information. But the long and short of it is this. In the city of Miami, throughout many areas of the city of Miami, you can go to a 300 unit per acre development density. 300 unit per acre. Right now in Edgewater it was 150 per acre. So what the neighbors were asking is, let us get to the 300, and in exchange, that developer must pay $35,000 per unit into a resiliency fund that's trapped in Edgewater for infrastructure and for our needs. And they're like, people can currently do it under RTZ in the county, and for some transportation changes, it's also important to note it's only in Edgewater. This does not include any single-family residential anywhere in the city of Miami, and it's along transit corridors as well. So it kind of makes sense. Edgewater in the near future will have a transit stop, a transit station. The planning and zoning staff is not currently always planning and zoning for this moment, but they're meant to kind of build out for 20 years into the future. So when they're looking at the transit nodes and they're looking at the existing density that already exists, is the map, can you put up that
Who has the clicker?
Yeah,
Yeah, the next slide.
Yeah, please. So if you look at Edgewater, and then you look at all of these other areas, double density is available all over there in different kinds of programs. So this really is nothing that unique. What's unique about it is that we're trapping that density and we're converting it into funding for specific needs that the neighborhood had asked for. So I think this is a really smart tool. It came to us, I wish I could take credit, I can't. It came to us directly from the community. The BNA sat in many of the meetings as well. I want to tell you, we probably had about 5 meetings directly with staff, so it took a lot of work. It passed at PZAB, I think maybe with 1 dissent. It passed the commission unanimously at first reading, and it passed again last meeting unanimously. So the information's out there. We think it's a great tool, and we want people who have questions or concerns to please talk to us, and we're happy to have those conversations. And with that said, I'm going to pass this on to Robert from Curtis and Rogers, because he's going to go straight into the Margaret Pace Park plan, the master plan for the park. Robert? And I will sign myself.
Testing. Good afternoon, everybody. Wonderful to see you all this evening. Thank you for coming out. I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief update on the adaptive waterfront improvements at Margaret Pace Park. Last time we spoke was in February of last year, so it's due time I tell you what's been going on. So right here, I've listed out our scope of services. The first 2 in green are ones that we've completed to date. Phase 1A is the Resiliency Master Plan Refinement, which is, when we came back in February, we showed you the master plan, we asked for your final input on that, and with that, we went back to the drawing board and essentially created a final report for the master plan based off of your input, and we submitted that to the city, a report in August of 2025. Concurrently, while that kind of master plan was getting wrapped up, we were also working on the Phase 1B adaptive waterfront improvements, which was kind of this area that I was showing you that we saw back in February. So this is just the Phase 1 portion of the project that is going to be, that we've developed into construction documents and will go to construction. And then we have in orange, we have the plan. So we have phase 1D in our scope of services. So that is the nature-based playground and splash pad. I know, I'm realizing now that as I say splash pad was one of the things that we axed out because that was something the community
Right.
did not want. So disregard the splash pad there, that's not happening. But yes, I mean, so the nature-based playground, that was something we talked about in depth, and we kind of got a lot of your input from on the master plan. So that is still planned, it is still out there. We have not received the notice to proceed on that from the city yet. And then on the kind of grayed out portion down here, we have what was listed on the scope of services as optional services. So these were services that had not been, we had not identified funding for, the city had not kind of earmarked funding for yet, but we were kind of leaving them out there. The first was phase 1C, which is the waterfront edge design guidelines verification. This was a submittal that we were potentially exploring, but we ultimately decided not to go with, given kind of some of the time constraints. And ultimately, I could go down a rabbit hole talking about waterfront edge design guidelines, but ultimately they're a rating system for designing outdoor spaces. And so a lot of the design concepts and strategies that are included in those guidelines, we naturally just included as designers because it's the right thing to do. Whether we got the seal and stamp of approval, that's kind of something else. But again, just know that we follow those guidelines because that's what we do. And then phase 1E, this was another part that was kind of in our scope of services is optional, the flexible sand sport expansion area. And this was the creation of a new flexible sand-based recreation area for activities like beach sports designed for proper drainage for year-round usability. And I don't know if you remember, let me go to the next slide, but in the previous, the master plan that Ken Moore had initially submitted before we kind of embarked on this journey, the master plan looked a little bit different. I don't know if you remember that there was like 6, we had expanded the volleyball courts from like 4, and it became like 6, and it was extending really far. So that's what kind of was initially in that flexible sand sport expansion area, which we kind of ended up looking at. So let me go. So this is the master plan that we ended up settling. This is what we talked about back in February. You gave us some comments, which I'm going to show next. But to quickly run through, we kept the tennis, we kept the volleyball, we moved the nature-based playground around to kind of organize. A big comment was kind of the conflict in activities between, kids playing and then running in dog poop and, the smell of dog poop overwhelming portions of the park. So a lot of the, some of the softer programming things, aside from the climate adaptive stuff, was really about organizing programs throughout the park to kind of create better separation between different activities. So keeping the high-use sports stuff in one area with the kids in another area and then the dogs completely separate from that. So that is where we left off with the master plan, and this was to continue. So in February 2025, we also kind of went through another round of absorbing all of the comments that you gave us back in February into that final iteration of the master plan report. So a lot of the things were kind of similar from the previous outreach that we did. I can't remember, I think it was November that we had done that, November 2024. But you can see there, a lot of it preserved the balance, avoiding unnecessary buildings, maintaining access, keeping views. We talked a lot about pedestrian safety, security, growth, and so on. So then, like I said, we kind of went through, and from that February 2025 meeting, we kind of hit the drawing board, and since then, we've just been going hard, collaborating with our civil engineers, with coastal engineers, different permitting agencies, to essentially get the construction documents done for the area that you're looking at, the kind of border phase 1 area. And then we submitted that, the kind of 100% construction document permit set. We submitted that to the city of Miami on December 15th, so just a month ago. And it includes all of these things, like I said, and kind of much more. It's a very broad subject, but we're really excited about it. And yeah, that's what we're waiting for the city now. The city's going to give us comments back on the plans. Once we receive those comments, we'll probably go through a round of revisions on the document. And then at which points, once we've kind of settled with us in the city on the final thing, we'll move forward into bidding and whatnot. And yeah, so thank you.
Before that, I did want to say one thing, and it has to do with development in general. Before I became a commissioner, I was just like you, meaning in the sense of my awareness of the way everything was going. And I just know I was so frustrated with the traffic, the noise, the light that didn't work, the street this and that. And what I wasn't aware of is that, you know, some streets belong to the county, some to the state, some to the city. It takes a lot of coordination and collaboration. And maybe one of the things that I probably should have really known, because I've been a commercial real estate lender in my past, professionally for a long time, is that you can build by right. It's your right to build. So if it's in the code, you can build it. And Damian Pardo can't stop you. Nobody can stop you. It's in the code. So if you ask for a variance, that's a different story. Then now that's a negotiation. Maybe the city decides, no, you can't do that, or you can do that. But right now, what's impacting all of us are 3 codes. It is the City of Miami, 21, Code 21. It is RTZ, that belongs to Miami-Dade County, and Live Local. And just to give you an idea, while this density in the City of Miami is going to 300, and RTZ already allows 300, Live Local allows 1,000 units per acre. And that's the state's Live Local program. So it's really important to focus on those areas and come up with strategies that can effectively change what we're living on a daily basis. And I just wanted to make that distinction. I wanted to recognize Danny Lopez with City of Miami Parks Department, who's going to talk a little bit about Market Place Park, and Melba, the park manager. And I will say, Danny, you've been spectacular. Melba has been incredible. And we help them wherever we can with our rapid response team that's an in-office team that comes out and does cleanups. But please, come on up. Thank you.
Good evening. Danny Lopez with the City of Miami Parks and Recreation, interim assistant director. Been doing this job for about 7 months. Interim assistant director, and when I came into this role, I realized going around different parks that Margaret Place. Can you hear me? I realized that Margaret Place needed some preventive maintenance, some love, and one of those, something that I really wanted to do was to do it as soon as possible. Right? I think, everyone from the residents, I have walkthroughs with Rick, and with some other folks, more residents, and it was like, we need to improve the park, we need to improve the park, we need to improve the park. So we wanted to do something quick. And something that I did very quickly was to bring Melba Lehman, who is your park manager, because if we really wanted to get these improvements done, we wanted to have somebody that was there, that was passionate, and that was going to be dedicated to making sure that this park was in the best shape possible, right? Some of the things that we've done to the park in the last 5-6 months is we did some painting, some pressure washing, graffiti removal, we pressure washed the tennis courts, the church room sculptures that are in the main walk area were all restored by the original artists. We just replaced all the lids on all the trash cans. We repaired the roof of the building. Electrical and water facilities are secure now. Basically, it's, throughout the park we had these cages that just looked pretty bad, and now, we replaced the cages, and they look much better. They give the park a much nicer look. We improved the visibility on the bay. We trimmed a lot of the landscape, we removed a lot of the invasive that was there, so that I literally walked the park today, and I was very pleased with what I saw. We have some upcoming additional upgrades. The restrooms are going to get new features, new toilets, new sinks, all of that, that's all coming. So Dog park enhancements, that's important to talk about because right, we implemented a bi-weekly professional cleaning. So we have a company that's coming out every 2 weeks cleaning the dog park. And now we also have a monthly turf and fountain disinfection. So they'll come, they'll clean the turf, they'll also disinfect the fountain where the drugs, where the dog did clean the water. We also, and I know the commissioner spoke about it, about Bradley, but the farmer's market was implemented, and it's been going really well, and thank you, Nova, again. I don't know how, we gotta thank Nova, because she's really dedicated, she really takes, right?
Yep.
She really,
100%.
right? And, she's there every Sunday, making sure everything's going well with the farmer's market, making sure things are running the way they should be, and making sure the park is staying as protected as possible as well, right? And that's about everything.
Good job. Perfect.
So it would be, can I?
There you go.
So it's easier if I just say Infrastructure and Public Works. We have Charles Alfaro and Colin Worth to talk a little bit about resilience, public worth, and North Bayshore Drive traffic study. So come on up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Charles Alfaro, Assistant Director, Department of Resilience and Public Works. I'm happy to be Colin Worth. He's our transportation manager, in charge of traffic impact analysis, traffic studies, traffic calming requests. First, he's going to tell you what we have in the pipeline, what has been studied in the past, what has been warranted for improvements, and then I'll go over some of the future infrastructure projects that we have going on in the pipeline as well.
Great, thank you all. We had recently studied, we are waiting for results and recommendations, but we studied North Bayshore Drive between 17th and 21st, just up here. Very recently, that is eligible for traffic calming. So we'll be working on identifying what the appropriate solution, given the context of the very busy, very pedestrian traffic. So I don't know what you did here or what you didn't hear, but North Bayshore Drive between 17th and 21st Street was eligible for traffic calming. We'll be looking at what options are available given the context of a very high volume road that also has great use of pedestrian crossings in that area. We've requested the county also look at that for pedestrian crossings. There are some elements that the county is responsible for, such as crosswalks and stop signs and those sorts of things. But we are looking at opportunities for traffic calming on North Bayshore Drive. 32nd Street, I'm not sure if it's still within Edgewater, but it's south of 36th Street, is also eligible. That's to the bay. That also had very high volume, very low speed, but very high volume. And Northeast 25th Street was also found to be eligible for traffic calming. So we'll see the results of that in terms of what options are available. We also recently studied, we're waiting for the results for Northeast 30th Street, Northeast 30th Terrace, and Northeast 4th Avenue. And so we should have results of that. I anticipate that that will also be eligible for traffic calming, but we don't have the results. That is what's in the pipeline. Next steps.
Next step with this will be, we'll work with the Commissioner's Office to prioritize. We have, I'm going to be honest, hundreds of locations in the city that are already eligible for traffic calming. So we work with the different Commissioner's Offices to prioritize what needs to be built with the available budget we have that year. So we'll continue working with Commissioner Pardo's office on that. Something I wanted to add, I know there is a lot of concern, as Commissioner mentioned, about jurisdictions. Like, I know there is a lot of concerns about traffic on Biscayne Boulevard, signal timing on Biscayne Boulevard. I know it's complicated. Signal timing in the county, whether it's a city, state, or county road, are under the exclusive jurisdiction of Miami-Dade County. On top of that, the design, the volume, the capacity of Biscayne Boulevard is under a jurisdiction of the state. So the city, we can coordinate with them, we can bring your concerns forward to, we have been working with Rick in the past, to these agencies, but it's out of the control of the city. And what we can do is advocate, continue bringing these issues in front of these other agencies, but these roads that are under state or county jurisdiction, we have zero control, not even permitting. You see construction, you see lane closures, you see anything in those streets is not permitted by the city. We don't even see it. They have their own permitting system. Regarding traffic calming, I wanted to add, on top of that, Miami-Dade County has exclusive jurisdiction over traffic calming, traffic flow, signs, and paper lines. So anything that we study for traffic calming, we have a manual for traffic calming and street closures, we need to follow everything that is in the manual. So we need to have a traffic engineer study the location. It takes time. So some of this, why is it taking so long? We need to have, for cost effectiveness, a few locations that we can hire a traffic engineer, go ahead, study. They provide that. That takes a few months to study. They cannot do it over the summer, according to the county, when the schools are out. They cannot do it over Christmas break, when the schools are out. All those traffic counts. So we have to follow that process. If it's eligible for traffic calming, we have to obtain then concurrence from fire rescue, police, and solid waste to make sure they are okay with traffic calming being implemented in a certain segment of the street. Like I know emergency responders, they don't want to see traffic calming on every block because it delays their response times. So we have to obtain concurrence with them. After that, we need to obtain by ballot, this is all requirements in the county, concurrence from all the affected neighbors in that block. Say we want to do a speed hump in a block, we need to send ballots to all the neighbors in that block, and we need to obtain 2/3 concurrence from those neighbors.
Oh my God.
Again, it's a process that is not simple, it takes time.
That's so crazy.
And then after that, we'll proceed to prioritize and budget for those constructions. They have to be a survey, they have to be design plans, and we'll proceed to construction. I know it can be frustrating, it can seem that we are taking a long time on some of this, but just giving you a quick overview that the process itself, as controlled by Miami-Dade County, it takes a lot of time for
I'm sorry, I've never heard the term traffic calming, just,
So there will be questions at the end, if we have time, we will promise to answer
okay,
questions.
I figured
Promise to
you
answer
could
questions
just
at the end.
tell us right now what it's.
Yeah. Very quickly, talk
So
about.
I wanted to go quickly also over
Charles, can you just say what traffic calming is?
traffic calming is when we have to meet a certain criteria according to the county. It has to be high volume or high speed on that street. So traffic calming, let's say you have high volume in your street, it's a speed hub, there are traffic signals, there are speed tables, there is chicanes, a number of things that can either slow down traffic or discourage traffic from using a certain street from going there.
Thank you.
So quickly let me go over some of the infrastructure projects we have in this area. We have, it's a little bit south of this, but we have the Brickell Bay Drive design build project. It will build a paved walk along the edge of Brickell Bay Drive. It will be tall, will build a new seawall and raise the road in that segment of Brickell Bay Drive between 14th Street and 15th Road. That's still under design. We're in phase 1 of the design. And even the budget, it will have to probably be split into a few phases to make sure we can build some at a time. We have Edgewater flooding. We know there is a lot of concern with flooding, especially on 23rd Street. It's a very low street every time it rains, especially if you combine it with high tide. You have seen that we have a portable pump permanent in that street. We manage that pump, when there is need, there is a big rain event, we send a staff at any time of the day to turn it off, turn it on. So this is another project that is 22nd Terrace, 23rd Street, and 4th Avenue. So to provide complete drainage, new outfalls, it will include a pump station on 4th Avenue to be able to pump some of this water out to the ocean. Again, this is another project that due to funding, we're gonna have to split into two phases. First phase will be 23rd Street, and including some new rehabilitation of the existing outfall and some new outfalls. And then the rest of the streets will be on a second phase. Keep going. We have seawalls. We have a total of seawalls, or 8 seawalls in Edgewater. 22nd Terrace, 25th Street, 26th Street, 27th, 30th Terrace, and 35th Street. All those seawalls that are at the street ends, in the public right of way, we are going to be replacing those. We are expecting 100% plans by the end of January. And after these, for now, as it is, we expect construction to start sometime mid of next year on the replacement of those 8 seawalls. Seawalls in private property are the responsibility of the private owners, but these are the ones that you see at the dead end within the public right of way. We're going to be replacing 8 of those in the year. Tidal valve. We have a total of tidal valves. When you have an outfall, it prevents, when there is a high tide event, for the water to come back into the city streets. So basically, it's kind of a backflow preventer that is placed at the end of those pipes at the outfall, prevents on the high tide that the water, as it happens on 23rd Street, goes back into the city's storm water system and bubbles up into the street. So there is a total of 35 in Commissioner Pardo's district. I have a map. I cannot tell you exactly, since it's a very small map, but we have a few that are in the outfalls in your neighborhood of Edgewater that will prevent that water from coming into the city streets when there is high tide. And the final one I have, a traffic circle here on Bayshore Drive between 15th and 17th Street. Those whole segments are going to be reconstructed. There's going to be like a big traffic circle to calm down and slow down traffic. And it will be right at the intersection where there is, when it makes the Y, North Bayshore, right in front of here. There will be construction of a big traffic circle we're planning to start construction later on this year, before the summer.
Good.
Also, I want to make note, next Tuesday at City Hall, if you are interested, there is a bicycle master plan update. We're looking to get input on biking. If you are a bicyclist or ride an e-scooter or other e-device, we want your input. That's also available on our website, as well as we also have a trolley master plan ongoing. We'd like to provide more information so you can get the word out and we can get surveys from everyone in the evening as well.
So Charles just told us that our projects are going to get priority. Thank you, Charles. So for the zoning and development update, welcome Jacob Kern.
Good evening, everyone. Very packed room, and I think that speaks a lot to how much you guys care about your neighborhood, all right? I'm originally from Indiana. I did my undergrad at Ball State, studied urban planning, and then I came to the University of Miami, studied architecture, got my master's there, and I never left. And why did I not leave? Because we have an amazing community, right? I have lived here for the last almost 20 years, and I really watched this place transform to a global metropolis. So I wanted to talk to you guys today a little bit about our zoning code, its process, why are things structured the way they are, what is it trying to achieve, how is it helping us, where is its faults, it's a brand new code. So the code is referred to as Miami 21, right? Why do we call it that? It was adopted in 2010 at the turn of the millennium, and Miami was looking forward to what's the next 100 years, right? Where what are the newest, youngest metropolitans in the nation, believe it or not? We didn't really get going big until the early 1900s, though we were founded in the late 1800s. So it was us at the turn of the century saying, what's our vision for the future? How are we going to grow, right? Because, we're a major metropolitan. We're the largest metropolitan in the state of Florida, one of the fastest growing states in the nation. I know we've all felt that since COVID and even before that, right? And so it's a code that recognizes, look, we gotta grow, so how are we gonna grow? So I wanna talk about kind of the grand bargain that Miami 21 envisioned, right? Prior to Miami 21, we had a zoning ordinance called 11,000, and it was leading to development that many of the citizens at the time, and maybe even today, didn't really like. You were getting overscaled development out along Coral Way with single-family homes right behind it. It wasn't pedestrian-friendly. The buildings turned away from the street, looking inward and not really building a community. So Miami 21 said, the writers of Miami 21 said, look, we need to infuse some of the concepts of smart growth, new urbanism, and we need to balance the trade-offs between growth and preservation. And how are we going to do that, right? And the big grand bargain of Miami 21 was, we're not adding more single-family lots. We can't. Our city is landlocked. Coral Gables is to the west, the ocean to the east, Miami Shores and other communities to the north. So we're locked in. So there's no new single-family lots being developed. So one of the biggest grand bargains of Miami 21 was, let's preserve the single-family homes we have. We don't necessarily want to structure and force the growth upon those areas and see those single-family neighborhoods suddenly turn into mid-rises and high-rises. And likewise, surrounding those single-family neighborhoods are usually large arterial roads like Flagler, Cayocho, Coral Way, and all the avenues, the major avenues that run north and south, right? And so, development was happening in those areas and was starting to overwhelm the single-family homes, and they had zoning that allowed taller buildings. And so it was trying to balance that interaction. And so one of the grand bargains of Miami 21 was, if we're going to preserve those areas, preserve Coconut Grove, preserve Shenandoah, preserve Little Havana, but we at the same time know we're in Florida, we're going to grow. Where do we want that growth to happen? And so the growth, the plan was written that most of that growth would be absorbed in the downtown, in the urban central business district, basically east of 95, south of 195, all the way down to Brooklyn, right? And we have seen that over the last, in the 20 years that I've been here, this is not the same city. I moved here, it was a slightly large, mid-sized city that was kind of a party town. And now we are a global metropolis that is attracting capital and eyes from around the world. We're on a level of almost like Dubai these days. So that was the grand bargain. We're going to supercharge development in downtown at the trade-off and expense of trying to preserve areas west of 95. But those areas are expected to grow as well, and they're also supposed to grow along the corridors. So that was kind of the main ethos, and that was built in the code from the beginning. Another one of the grand bargains and processes of Miami 21 is, because we need this growth, it was, we want, if people play by the rules, if they follow all of our rules, design standards, they go by what we call by right, right? And one of the concepts of by right is that if you follow all the rules, you go to building permit and you get approved. Now, the code also has ways in which developers and applicants can come in and say, hey, I need a little relief, It doesn't fit the dimensional standards that Miami 21 just comes in and poses and, the setback's gotta be 30 feet or 20 feet. Sometimes that doesn't work with a developer who's trying to make it work and it just doesn't quite fit, and so they can't ask for relief, they can ask for waivers. Now, when they ask for waivers, that's when the neighbors start to get some input, because they're asking to deviate from our code, right? And, but those are the minor deviations, and the rules are written in the code as to what they can ask for, how much they can ask for, and that does give us an opportunity. When those developers ask for the waivers, that's when I can say, the neighbors got some fears about this, they have some concerns, we'd like for you guys to address that. But I want to point out that there's a difference between a by right project, whereas if they follow every single rule, we don't have a way to appeal or stop it, right? But if they ask for waivers, then we could do that, we can start negotiations with them. Now, another thing you might be asking is, well, why do we need all this growth? You know, I've lived here my whole life, and I don't like all the growth. I don't want all the traffic. I don't want all the pollution. Growth comes with consequences, right? I live on Miami Beach. I know what it's like. They're about ready to tear down a community center across from my house, and they're going to build a fire station. So I understand that development and growth has its challenges. So then the question then becomes, well, why don't we just stop growth? Miami's great as it is. Let's just not grow anymore. The thing about urban planning is that there's a lot of trade-offs, right? You don't get something for nothing. And if you deny something, there's also consequences. So if you look around the world, in the United States, you have places like San Francisco. They're struggling with a lot of the same things that we're struggling with. They were struggling with a lot of this stuff before us, right? So you look at Los Angeles, you look at San Francisco, you look at New York, you look at London. All of these cities struggle with affordable housing. They struggle with traffic congestion. And part of the reason why a lot of those communities, especially in California or even New York, struggle with affordability is because people say, no, I'm done. And that might seem and make everyone feel good immediately in the moment, but the consequences come later. And that's because we live in a capitalist market economy. And people like myself who grew up in Indiana decide one day, I want to move to Miami. I went to university, I want to stay in Miami. So the demand and the pressure in a market-based economy, and I just want to give you guys all a thought experiment. Imagine if Miami-Dade County today said, you know what? I don't want to see any more Mercedes in the city of, I don't want to see any more Mercedes, there's too many Mercedes. So I'm going to put a cap. Only 100 Mercedes can be sold in Miami-Dade County. If the county did that, guess what the price of those Mercedes would happen to those Mercedes? Skyrocket. It's a high in demand. So we know we need to grow, and the state knows we need to grow, and the county knows we need to grow, and I'm glad you mentioned those other programs, and I do want to touch on those a little bit. So the question is, we know we need to grow, we know if we don't grow, there will be consequences. Namely, the prices will just start skyrocketing, and you can see in San Francisco, Tenderloin, and Skid Row in Los Angeles, homelessness, and it can cause, I'm a millennial, I'm 40 years old, I've got a good job at the city, I still don't own a house, and why is that? Because earlier in my career, I wasn't doing so well, and even every time I progress, the housing prices in Miami are just shooting off. And then you might say, well, Jake, we are building, we're building everywhere. The demand for this place is so extreme that even building the amount that we're building is still not keeping up. It's like we're on a hamster on a treadmill. So you build a couple more units and a couple more towers, the demand that's coming is like a thunderstorm off in the distance. You can't ignore it. So then the next question is, okay, if we have to accommodate growth, where should we accommodate the growth? How should we accommodate the growth? How can we do it so it doesn't generate so much more traffic congestion? How do we calm the streets? How do we incentivize pedestrianization? How do we invest in transit so that we're not all gridlocked on Biscayne Boulevard? And trust me, I bike through your guys' neighborhood every weekend. I'm constantly, I don't even have a car, I bike to it from work. So I'm always out looking around. So to go back to, let's see, that's the basic structure. And so you guys, because you guys are in downtown, or in the urban core, in the urban central business district, that's why you guys are seeing the most rapid growth, because that is where, back in 2010, and even before that, Miami 21 didn't just land in 2010. It started 5-10 years before that. It was a very exhaustive process that included community members, and we have got a lot of new community members, but the time that people were asking these questions, we gotta grow, where do we wanna grow? We wanna preserve certain areas, we wanna preserve historic areas, we wanna preserve some of our gem neighborhoods, and this is a gem neighborhood. I have watched this neighborhood transform. I get online now, and 10, 15 years ago, you didn't hear about Edgewater on Instagram. Now I hear about it. Other cities, other neighborhoods, people around the world, because this is an amazing place. Another thing I do want to talk about is what you mentioned before. We have, the way that, I want to talk about the government and how government is structured, right? We have a unique form of government in the United States. We've got the federal government, and they control certain things. We have the state government, and they control certain things. And believe it or not, the state has a lot of power. And one of the chief powers that states have is zoning. So Florida has their own rules about zoning, California has their own rules, New York has their own rules, and they're all different. Each state's, We live in a great country that we have a 50-state experiment, and every state and community is trying to figure it out, and we can look at other places and say, ooh, they're not doing so good, or oh my God, they're doing great. And I can tell you the world is looking at Miami and saying, wow, they're doing something here, right? But with that tiered government, because the state controls the zoning, they devolve those powers to the county and to the municipalities because the states do want people to control their neighborhoods and have a say in their neighborhoods, and that's a good thing. But what has happened with zoning started in the early 1900s. The first zoning code was in New York, really like 1916, I believe. And then you start to see it trickling into the 1930s. And by the time you get to the 1950s, pretty much every community in the United States has it. And it's basically shaped our growth. It's the American dream, the single-family house, 2-car garage, nice yard. That has been our trajectory of the United States over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And that's had good consequences, and that's had bad consequences. And I would say one of the worst of those consequences is housing affordability, because once you gave that local control to the community, everybody was saying, you know what, I don't want that development, I don't want that development, I don't want that development. And it's not just Miami that says that, it's every municipality, every neighborhood, and suddenly we start getting into a world where, oh my God, by the time you're in 2025, even my small rural town home in Indiana, my hometown, they are struggling with affordability. You know, you never would have thought rural Indiana is a place like that, but there are consequences, like I said before. And because of those consequences, sometimes the county and the state grab the power back and say, you know what, local community, you're not, like, let's talk about the county. He mentioned RTZ, that's the Rapid Transit Zone. So in the 80s, the county comes along and builds a giant metro rail station, right? And for the next 2 decades, no one really used the train because, a lot of times around those train stations, Coral Gables, the roads are surrounded by single-family homes, which is not really going to generate the ridership. The people who are most likely to use a train are within a quarter mile or a half mile of that train station. When you get beyond that, people aren't really using it. They're just going to get in the car and they're going to go. And also, people aren't going to use the train if it's not designed in a walkable, pedestrian-friendly manner. So, the county for decades was going to Coral Gables. They were coming to Miami and saying, you need to upzone around those train stations. I went and built you a new train line that cost us hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and you guys aren't, upzoning around it and concentrating your density and development around it. And, Miami back in the day would say, yeah, okay, whatever, we're going to do our own thing. And Coral Gables would say the same thing. Well, about 5-6 years ago, after a couple decades of them cajoling us, they adopted this new rapid transit zoning designation, and that basically allows them to take the power away from us and say, Miami, if you don't allow densities and heights of this amount, I am going to take the power away from you, I'm going to impose it upon you, and then you're going to lose complete control over any of the process at all. And then even more recently is the Live Local Act. That's kind of like the last thing I want to talk about. It was passed in 2023. Its whole purpose is to address affordability and to deal with this supply and demand mismatch. And basically what they said is if a developer comes in and they put 40% of the units on a site as workforce housing, then you get the highest density in the city, which is 1,000 dwelling units per acre. So I know you were mentioning 150 and 300, but it can allow up to 1,000. So we have to be conscientious of that, right? We can propose stopping development, we can propose downzoning development, which that can have legal ramifications and consequences that we would face, but more importantly, we can completely lose control altogether. And that's a dangerous place. I don't know that anybody wants to be here, because we do need to be able to shape our growth. And I think our rules are personally better than the county and the state, so I just want to...
Lose control.
Yeah, so I just want to end there. I think, you mentioned the Edgewater resiliency. I think that's something that helps us come back, live local, helps us get our control back, and also helps you invest in resiliency and the infrastructure upgrades that you guys need. So I just wanted to give you guys a little background about the Miami 21 zip code.
Thank you very much. That was super comprehensive and really, really good. I wanted to ask Hector Badia with, yes, please, everybody stay. Hector Badia with the Baywalk, for the Baywalk update. A lot of people are concerned about. Here you are.
Good evening. I'm Hector Medina. I'm with the Office of Capital Improvements. Baywalk, very briefly, we got a fine grant for the design of the Baywalk. We are underway with selecting the architect engineer and simultaneously, we are executing the contract with Florida Inland Navigation District as our grant agency. So with that being said, once we have the architect on board, we'll hold a community input meeting. We'll connect with the district office, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. So question and answers. Great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So,
Oh, okay, good.
Marcos, we have one more mic. Where's the other mic?
I did want to thank everyone for staying here and being engaged, and just really thank you very much for listening and participating.
So if you have questions, this is behind Marcos. If you can line up here. Be happy to address anybody that's
They
up
might-
there
they
on
might
any
ask.
topic.
You're like, all right, I don't want to do it.
So come on up if you have questions.
My name is Neil Nathanson. I'm relatively new here. I bought a condo at 1800 Club 3 years ago. Commissioner, I met you, or you met me, when we dealt with the question of the hotel being built in my backyard. Edgewater. I have a series of questions, but let me try to boil it down to one. Quite honestly, after that hearing, I got the impression that the community input doesn't mean shit. We were given, I was told, when I went there, I was given a strict 2-minute time limit. I didn't finish my comments, but I was shut off and I didn't get to finish what I had to say. The developers got 2 hours. And at the end, I was told by someone that all of the questions that we raised about the traffic, about the alleyway in the back, about the crime that may be coming from all of these Airbnb people moving in there, none of that stuff really gets considered because the design review committee only deals with the space inside the boundaries of the lot. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I came away with the distinct impression that all the questions that we were raising about the excess traffic on 4th Avenue, what it's going to do to the intersections at Biscayne, the issues of crime coming from Airbnb's residents, all of that stuff ultimately doesn't matter because the committee only has the jurisdiction to deal with things like the landscaping and the building materials and things like that. So could you address the question of community input, how relevant it is, whether it makes any difference at all or not?
I'll give the expert answer here first, and then I'd like to chime in.
Sure. So what you're referring to is the Urban Development Review Board, which is referred to as the UDRB. So the UDRB is a process that any project has to go to if they're over 200,000 square feet, which obviously the Edge House is a very large-scale building. The UDRB is a recommending board, so they don't actually have the ability to stop or deny a project. The purpose of the UDRB board is to give recommendations to the planning director so that the planning director can act upon those recommendations and try to get the developers to implement them. The UDRB board is supposed to look at, how are you coming into the site for traffic? How are you loading and unloading? How does the overall aesthetics of the building look in the neighborhood? How does it augment the walkability and pedestrianization of the neighborhood? So it's a board of generally architects that are professional, that live and breathe in this type of world, and they give recommendations to the planning director to say, hey, I think it would be wise if they address this, this, and this. And we do take those recommendations in the planning and zoning process and try to get those developers to modify their designs to address those concerns that are raised by the board. But ultimately, the board is a recommending board, and they don't really have power to deny. They're not a judicial board.
I want to address what you said about speaking for 2 minutes and feeling like nobody heard. Yeah, that's how it feels. I know that's how it feels. But that's really not what happens. You kind of would never know because the way you feel is like, I got no feedback. Nothing happened. This is miserable. Why did I come? And a lot of people feel that way. I can tell you, sitting up there, I listen to each and every person. I'm taking notes. Other people are taking notes. We follow up with staff after. A lot of what you just said about crime, about the conditions that are surrounding that area, we want to be involved with. So if you still have that document that had that long list of issues,
We may not be able to solve it in a zoning kind of way, but there are other ways to approach it, and we might be able to at least tackle some of that. And we very much appreciate the opportunity to do that.
One quick follow-up, if I may. I understand the God-given right to build, right? But I understand, I'm told that it's 37 floors, but they got the bonus of 20 extra floors. How did they manage to get a 57-story building when it's 37 is the normal height?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So Miami 21 in your T6 zones, which is what this whole area is, where most of the Edgewater is zone T6 36. I know this is wonky and bureaucratic. What that T6 36 zoning means is that they have a base height and then they have a bonus height. Both of those are by right processes. They didn't need to go through some sort of board to get those extra heights. So the first 36 stories of the building, they get basically for free, right? Beyond that, when they start to get into the bonus levels, they have to go through our public benefits program. Again, that's an administrative program, and the public benefit program consists of historic preservation. They can go buy out rights for historic properties up in MIMO, because those MIMO properties are zoned for much higher density, but they've got a height limit of 35 feet. So that unused development capacity that those sites have, those historic properties have, the developers here in Edgewater could go buy those unused rights from the MIMO district, transfer it over here, and that's a business transaction that is done, and that funds the rehabilitation of those historic properties. This is why, if you go look at the MIMO district, when I first moved here, the MIMO district was in shambles. Today, it's really revitalized, and it's been funded by these developers in Edgewater and downtown and Brickell buying out the unused rights. That's one of the ways. Another way they could do it is through increased open space. They could go buy out space other parts of the city or even in the Edgewater neighborhood, donate it to the city, and they can get they can get the additional height bonus. They can do affordable housing. They can do green building. So their program is written into the code. It's not like, oh, somebody's coming up to us and saying, oh, I'll give you a little bit and you get more. No, it's literally written into the code. If you give X, you get Y. So the T636 zoning has 36 stories by right, and it has up to 60 stories for bonus. So when you think about your zoning's not really 36. Your zoning is really 60, right? And that's built into the code, but they don't get beyond 36 stories, they don't get it for free. They have to engage in the public benefits program, which is written into the code, and they have to meet to the letter of the code to get that extra height in FLR. FLR stands for floor area, the square footage of the building.
Can we find out what they gave to get this extra?
So the project has not been approved yet, so they haven't done the transaction. When they do that, they have to do it before they get the building permit. So they will not get the building permit unless they go through one of those programs, identify it, prove to us city officials that they've actually done it. And I don't know which way this program will do it. I don't know if they'll go do historic preservation. I'm not sure what their method is. But they will not be able to get the building permit until they've done that. So once that building permit is officiated, I could then at that time say, hey, this is the pathway of the 6 or 7 ways that they could do it. This is the one they chose, and these are the documents they provided to get that.
Hello everyone, Elvis Cruz, and thank you for hosting this forum. I'm just going to talk about 2 items. The first one, Biscayne Park. If you don't know, that's the city park that's right north of the cemetery. It has been neglected for many years by the city. I believe it has been systematically neglected so they can do something else with it. I strongly urge the city to improve Biscayne Park in conjunction with Margaret Pace Park. Some people wanted pickleball, other people did not. That's a great place to put your pickleball courts. So you should coordinate and improve Biscayne Park. Biscayne Park is very threatened. If you've been following the news, there was a private school that wanted to take it over for their own use. And the city itself has been looking at Biscayne Park as if it's a vacant lot for a police station or some other city building. So we're going to lose that park unless we let the city know we want to keep that park, we want to use it for our own recreational enjoyment. The other thing I want to talk about real quickly is zoning. The very learned gentleman from Indiana mentioned affordable housing, for example. I was waiting for him to mention 2 of the biggest reasons why housing is so expensive in South Florida. He didn't mention them. Number 1, foreign buyers. Foreign investors make up a very large percentage of the purchases of housing. And the other is corporate. Big corporations are buying up tons of housing. That needs to be a change in the paradigm. the structure of how the actually works. But there's powerful forces that would oppose that. But that's the reality of the situation. If you're sincere about wanting to improve housing affordability, those are the two big fires in the room. Don't spray water on the smoke, spray water on the fires. I also want to mention that there seems to be an unspoken goal in the city of Miami of infinite growth, as if we should have an affordable housing unit available for anyone that ever wants to move here, regardless of how that affects our quality of life. Our traffic congestion, potable water supply, sewage treatment capacity, garbage disposal capacity, park space per capita. It just doesn't make any sense what's going on. If you follow it out to its logical conclusion, our quality of life will forever go down as they try to cram as many people as they possibly can. Infinite growth makes no sense, and yet that is the paradigm that they want to follow. So in closing, I would recommend that the city change the thought process so that protecting our quality of life is the primary motivation instead of enabling developer profits. We're already hugely overzoned. The city is already zoned to allow 8 times more housing units than were counted in the 2010 census. 8 times. That was computed by the city itself. Now imagine what would happen if we had even twice as many as were counted in the 2010 census. We already know what our situation is now vis-a-vis our constantly diminishing quality of life. That was a lot to pack in, but if anybody wants to talk to me, I'm right here. Thank you.
So that was a lot, so hopefully we'll answer it. I'll let you go first off.
I definitely want to raise the point, you made 2 really, really powerful statements. You know, again, we live in a free society, right? We're the United States of America, we've allowed immigration, and we obviously are currently going through this country with some immigration issues, right? But ultimately, like, zoning doesn't control, through my zoning code, I don't control whether foreign buyers or foreign people get to move to the United States. That's something the federal government has to do. I mean, it's a higher power above me. Likewise, the corporations. Again, we live in a capitalist society, so if somebody's got the money and wants to go buy the property, they can do that, right? We don't live in a communist society where the government says, no, you can't buy that, right? And I think that's a good thing. But maybe the federal government needs to put handicaps around. I will agree. He is right. If a corporation's coming in, they're going to outbid us. They're going to outbid me. They're going to outbid you. And I can't, as a zoning, stop that. So yeah, the federal government needs to come in and say, you know what, there needs to be limits on what corporations can go do. Because this is happening even in rural Indiana and Indianapolis, Indiana. Corporations are coming in and buying out entire neighborhoods, and we're all going to end up renters. So I agree with those 2 points. Back to the comment about the city being zoned 8 times. Yes, as I mentioned before, the city is planning for long-term growth, right? They're looking over the next 100 years. So that is baked into the code. It is not going to happen overnight, right? 99% of people are not looking to sell their property today or tomorrow. And even if they were, there's not the demand to fill that immediately. But yes, the city is looking for long-term growth, and there's reasons why we're looking for long-term growth. Because again, like I said, you guys can come in here and say no more growth. And you're gonna have, that will feel good for the first couple of years. Until you see the prices really start to skyrocket. And I know we have seen prices skyrocket. But do you wanna be like San Francisco? Do you wanna be like Los Angeles? Do you wanna be like New York? Do you wanna see homeless people? Do you want the city, do you want the middle class to move out because they can't afford it? I have staff members that have just had children that can't buy houses here. And the city does pay a decent wage, right? So I'm a millennial, I'm 40 years old and I have a darn good job, and I still don't own a home, and I've been here for 20 years. So, you know, do you want to see homelessness and feces all over the ground, which then leads to addiction and mental abuse? Do you want to see your children not be able to stay in the community? Think about your own kids, their futures, right? Do you want the local people, the families to be able to stay together, or they get to college, they go off to college and they say, I can't come back to my home, right? So these are the choices we have to ask ourselves. It's not all one-sided. Urban planning is trade-offs. You're not going to get 100% Shangri-La. You're not going to just get utopia like, oh, stop development, no, now you're in utopia. It might feel like utopia for the first couple of years, but there's going to be a bad hangover later when it comes with all of these ills that we see other cities having. And I'm proud of Miami that we've charted a different course than a place like Los Angeles, San Francisco, or New York. I don't want to go work for those cities because I think their ideology It's maybe not the ideology we want here. And there's a reason why everyone in the world right now is looking at Miami because of the changes we've made. Do we need to shape growth? Absolutely. Do we need to concentrate growth around transit? Absolutely. Do we need to make sure we're incentivizing resiliency, traffic calming, pedestrianization, biking? Yes, we can, and yes, we should, and that's what the zoning code is for. But I don't think we should ever just say, turn the spigot off, because it's going to come with consequences.
I'll address Biscayne Park real quick. When we first came into office, Biscayne Park was under a revocable license agreement, and the plan was to build an enormous dome, kind of an air-conditioned dome, that would primarily be used by a private school. And then in the off hours, the public would get some kind of chance to use it maybe. We worked really hard at canceling that revocable license agreement. Now, you could imagine the opposition that was out there. What do I mean by opposition? Moneyed interests that were opposing this. We won that battle. The park is not slated to be any part of the City of Miami Police or Department or purchased or anything like that. We understand the priority of green space and parks, and we're looking at how we can mold that through other transactions in Omni CRA and make development that makes sense, leave good park space. In fact, we had the locks. We regularly go by Biscayne Park. We regularly monitor the gates. I have gone there on Saturday and been fuming and contacted the director of parks because the gates were locked. And the reason is because sometimes the other school or maybe a park ranger didn't understand that they don't have rights for the park. So we've been on top of that, and we've been really on top of the fact that they cannot be locked, that they are available to the public. If you ever go to Biscayne Park and those gates are locked, please call us immediately. It is a public space. We want it to be used in the neighborhood. We don't have enough in the urban core. Some folks have asked us, hey, we see other commissioners buying land, and we should be doing that. And we would love to do that, but our land isn't $800,000. Our land isn't $900,000. We don't have the dollars to buy land in Edgewater, Brickell, or downtown in the urban core. So, again, I think that's a very important consideration. And Rick, I'll let you go ahead with Q&A, or Marcos.
My name is Ed Cook. I live in the Grand, and lived before that in Biscayne 21. My compliments to all of you. I'm sure all of us applaud your professionalism and your interest and eagerness. And, you have a long list of things. I'll give you 3 small things. They're at the bottom of the list. 1, behind the Omni building, there is a street that goes along it. A year and a half ago, I spoke at the city hall, asking them to do something about the potholes. He said they would get around to it. He said pave it. They came and they filled it, bumpy. But it's going to get worse. That's number 1. Number 2, in front of the Grand, there's the trolley that sits there between shifts or between moving around. Maybe because it's a little bit shady, but it also creates, for coming out of the driveway, an impossible way to look around. Move them back to the Marriott, our nice, luxurious neighbor. Put them back 50 or 60 feet and give us some view. Third, would you have your people look at the little islands that are right behind the Omni? Maybe they could take a little bit of redesigning, like coming right out of the Grand. You have to go down here. If you were to take the nose off the turning in, and the cars could shoot right out and go that way. That's certainly a little bit of a redesign and help us in the traffic. They're a little bit on the list, but I might get to them first. Thank you.
I have a question. Well, I'm going to pass it over to you, but I just want to make sure that Bradley Mills sits with you and takes down concrete information. That's wonderful what you just said, because it's all very concrete and it's things we can work on. So,
No, I just wanted to, the second item about the trolley, what exactly is that?
In front of the ground.
Parks northbound in front of the Grand on the,
So when they go out of the driveway, they can't see oncoming traffic, because the trolley's sitting there blocking.
We'll take a look at that.
again, definitely, we'll sit and we'll get that information. This is kind of, I go through it all the time, especially on bike, so I'm very familiar with the areas you're talking about, and we'll make sure to try to address it as best as possible, and thank God we have staff that wants to do the same.
There's been a great need, you know about the senior planet, they're just asking that it could divert 2 blocks, and it would be able to drop people off right in front.
that's a good
They
idea.
tell me that they asked down City Hall years ago, and it's being worked on. It hasn't worked at all.
Something about the trolleys, as Colin mentioned, we're undergoing a trolley master plan with the evaluation of all, we have 13 trolley routes, re-evaluation of those routes.
Marcus.
Part of the problem is all those routes, they operate under county surtax. They are paid for the county surtax funds, CIT. And we have what's called an interlocal agreement with Miami-Dade County, and those routes are pre-approved already. So once we finish the master plan that Colin was mentioning, that that probably 6 months from completion, we'll look into optimizing that, making sure we're making the best use of our funds, and that most likely will include realigning of some of these trolley routes to make sure we're reaching new population centers, new senior centers, and new parks for schools. That will be part of this reevaluation of the trolley master plan that we're doing right now.
So my questions are regarding the, I'm Liz Emmer, is regarding the Resiliency Trust Fund. I attended the Zoom last week, I believe, and I understood that it wasn't actually active yet, that it had to pass the commission. So is it active or not? Is it actually a true fund?
So think of it as active. There's a technicality, I don't know. You have a 10-day veto period for that to happen. But I mean, it passed commission unanimously. Think of it as active. Now that doesn't mean it's been activated. So that's just an option available. So developers may never use it. Property owners may never use it if they want to make a certain change. And other people may, so it has not been activated in that sense, like turned on like a switch.
So I'm just wondering, to that effect, if Live Local and Miami 21 already grants 1,000 units or whatever it is that the developers check off and they're granted whatever they have by rights, what is the realistic expectation that this fund will actually be used since they already get so much?
I'm going to let him explain in detail, but generally, there's a lot of comfort with Miami 21 with certain developers, and they don't necessarily want to leave the city on some of these sites, but you know way.
So let's talk about some of the underlying zoning densities that are built into the code. So you're that T636 zoning that we talked about before. The underlying density of that is 150 dwelling units per acre, right? So the county, through their RTZ zoning, they were allowing 300 dwelling units per acre, so double your density. So if a developer goes to the county and says, you know what, Miami's only giving us 150 dwelling units per acre, you offer 300, I want to use your program. Then they go to the county accepts their application, the county rezones them, the city of Miami loses jurisdictional power, so the building permits at that point don't even come to us. Completely circumvents us and goes straight to the county. And I can tell you, I'm not a fan of their zoning code. I don't like what it produces. I think our zoning code was well thought out in 2010. Focusing on walkability, pedestrianization, trying to screen the big hulking parking garages, making that ground floor activated with trees, widening the sidewalks. Miami 21 actually does that. It makes them widen the ground floor an extra 6.5 feet or an extra 10 feet the sidewalk that already exists. So you're getting
You're going from like a 5-foot sidewalk all of a sudden to a 12-foot sidewalk or a 15-foot sidewalk. So there's a lot of good built into Miami 21, but if we don't play ball, the county will take control from us, and they will be twice as dense. And then Live Local is even worse, because the way Live Local is written is if they participate in that program, they get 40% of the units as workforce, they unlock the highest density in the city. The highest density in the city is not your neighborhood. Like I said, you only have 150 dwelling units per acre. But the highest density in the city is not far away. Right in downtown, that's where they can get the 1,000 dwelling units per acre. So if any one of their sites is within a mile of one of those sites, it's kind of like a chain. If I'm within a mile of a T680 zone, right, you're at T636, that allows 36 stories by right. That unlocks the height and the density of the T680, which actually the T680 allows 80 stories by right and unlimited height with benefits. So this is where the state's coming in and saying, you know what, community, I'm not playing your game, I'm taking cuts. So you've got two government agencies above you that are forcing upon us. So I think it's very smart that we did what we did, because we took some of our power back. Yes, does it require us to now also match that county and say, you know what, we're gonna also allow 300 dwelling units per acre. But in order to go from the 150 to the 300 dwelling units per acre, they don't get those units for free. Every single unit that they buy beyond 150 dwelling units per acre, they gotta pay us $35,000. So you start adding that up, you go 100 units, that's $3.5 million. That's one project doing it, the next project doing it, the next project doing it. You talk about your resiliency, how you have your master plan and how it's unfunded. How much, I don't know what percentage you said it was. You know, so it's great for us to have a grand vision, right, for a resiliency plan, but if we don't have the funds behind it, you ain't gonna get any resiliency. So that resiliency fund, that money that they have to pay in order to get that additional density goes into that fund, and coupled with the bond that he talked about, now you guys might finally start to get traction. So maybe we can start raising some of these roads. Maybe we can start investing in pumps. Maybe we can work on the seawall and raising that up and putting, you know, and then like we see with your park, where you guys are going and protecting the park for the next 50, 100 years, because we're gonna have a hurricane. We've got sea level rise. So if we don't get serious right here, right now, we're gonna lose our power. We're not gonna get any resiliency through a program. So I think it was the smart, given all the options that we had, I think it was the best option the city could make. If we don't play ball, the higher jurisdictions are going to take power from us, and we'll get nothing in return, and we'll lose complete control of the process. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to let the state or the county determine what happens here, because they will shove growth down your guys' throat like you've never seen before, and you will have no control over it.
So I just want to respect their time, maybe one or two other questions, because,
I have a question. It's kind of a multi-phase question, it won't take long. So when Northeast Second was going under construction, I started emailing people so that they could include a crosswalk. There is no traffic light. I know I've said this at multiple meetings. Between, 22nd and 30th. That is a place with businesses, with restaurants, somebody's gonna get killed there. 2.5 years ago, when they started construction, I started communication. And this is what I have a problem with the city about. The residents like him, like me, who are active and want to be active, suggest things, and it goes into a black hole. This was 2.5 years ago. Nobody told me it was a county thing. Nobody told me who to go to. But I kept emailing this one nice man. I still have an email thread that's almost 2.5 years old. And nobody's done school on it. The flooding on 23rd Street, nobody's done squat. Yet, RE Reserve builds their huge building on 23rd. The other day I walked to the bay. There's new little parking signs that allow loading zones instead of having public parking. All of a sudden, next to the RE Reserve on the south side of 23rd and the bay, I live at 23 Biscayne, you can't park there anymore because somebody put up signs of loading zones. I've lived there 5 years. Until that building was built, everybody was very happy because they had public parking. Now it's gone. Who allowed those signs to go up? And why? Because their address, RE Reserve address, is on 24th. Would somebody like to tell me? I would be more than happy to hear your answer. The rest of the street is totally public parking, except next to the RA Reserve, where they have a no standing zone, even though their address is on 24th. Just blows my mind. Thank you.
On those items, the first one, Northeast Second Avenue, as you mentioned, is, I mentioned that jurisdiction, it's under Miami-Dade County jurisdiction. Every time it comes to our department, it usually comes through me or calling here, those requests for crosswalks or pedestrian improvements. We pivot and we send them straight to the Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works. It's their decision. They have to do a traffic study to see if the pedestrian crosswalk is warranted. Sometimes it's not only the crosswalk. They want to do it with a temporary flashing vehicles to bring extra attention, extra awareness to that safety to the crosswalk. But be sure, every time we receive, as I said, we are your advocates with the state and the county. We send those requests to Miami County. Regarding the loading zones, those are by the Miami Parking Authority. I don't know how they are deciding where they go and how they put them up, but Miami Parking Authority also has jurisdiction over all its street parking in the city. So those all loading zones have been by the Miami Parking Authority.
So as you can tell, there are a lot of different entities, Miami Parking Authority, Miami-Dade County, City of Miami, but our office, your commissioner's office, is responsible to answer to you. So you email District 2 at miami.gov, and it's with the state, with the county, with whatever. You're going to see our requests, and you're going to see the kind of interaction or work that we're doing to try to resolve the issues. I'm not saying it can be resolved, but we do resolve. There's quite a few we resolve, and we know the people in Miami Parking Authority. We work with them. We know the folks in a lot of these other jurisdictions. We collaborate with our county commissioners, with our state representatives and our state senators. So please use us. Just District 2 at miami.gov, and we're there to serve you.
We're trying, but it's pointless. 2.5 years.
Well, I don't know. We've only been there 2 years, but if
I
you,
understand, but what I'm saying is every time we make a suggestion, it goes into a black hole. Just like his. I'm sorry. I appreciate your hard work, but, it's a black hole.
okay, well, I'm trying to give you a solution that will help. And if you email District 2 at miami.gov, I personally see each and every one of those emails, and I guarantee you it doesn't go by ignored.
That's fine. I will email it tomorrow along with the
Please do.
loading zone signs that got put up to take away public parking for people that live in smaller buildings that don't have garages. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Thank you, and thanks for giving us another shot.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Kozowski. I live over here on 15th. And I have a suggestion that might help. We have major events in this neighborhood, anywhere in the city for that matter. I believe the city should require whatever permit is granted to that entity, like Art Basel, they must use geofencing for share buyback. So that people have to walk away from the event, and there's designated areas for people to use Lyft and Uber. It's a super simple solution. The congestion around the main tent for Art Basel, first of all, the event's incredible. I'm super blessed to live across the street from it, and it's amazing to live, and I don't have to, get in a plane for 20 hours like other people do to come to this event. But it needs to be more organized.
That's a great suggestion, and we are implementing some of that geofencing with ride sharing. So we will, if you want to as well email us, we can report back to you and let you know the details behind that.
Hi, I'm Brett Hedrick. I live on Northeast 24th Street, so thank you all for stepping in front of the proverbial fire in my chair. Appreciate it and hearing our voices. After going to some of the community events here where it was specifically about urban development, because it's so heavily impacting our quality of life. I guess my question is, thank you for explaining and shedding some light on the long-term goals and the long-term vision. But what is being done in the meantime for the community members who have already invested or purchased or have spent their life savings or what have you to live here, only to have area reserve or one of these other developments come and just completely demolish? I've had 3 of my vehicles completely demolished. Our building has had over $1 million in damages because of reckless development. And going to these community events, I was certain in my mind, oh, nobody's got a worse story than I do. Right? Like, I'm coming like prepared to explain, only to hear every one of the people at that meeting to have their version of the same story. And so I guess my question to you is, cool, I completely understand the vision, but what about the permits and coding can protect some of us residents who already live here to help our quality of life?
So I think, zoning codes are not a static document. They constantly evolve. We're constantly amending them, just like we did with that program right there. And like I said before, the zoning code is actually developed such that the development really is going to happen in downtown. So that means you guys here in the room are bearing the greatest burden of the city's growth, right? So if you're going to bear the brunt of the growth, you should get the lion's den of those public benefits back to you. And I think, one of the things we've talked about in the city is that we need to update that public benefits program. If they're going to be going from 36 to 60 stories, what is the community getting in return? Are we getting a fair deal for that extra height and density? So I think, how do you transform growth from being a bad thing to a good thing? You make sure you're getting a fair deal out of it. You make sure that zoning code incentivizes money towards parks so that we are not living in a concrete jungle. Or if we are in an urban area, we got great parks to go with it. We got great plazas to go with it. We got bike lanes to go with it. We invest in affordable housing. The public benefits program has not been looked at since the beginning of 1921. Things have been added to it, but I think it personally needs a comprehensive review and analysis and alignment with what parts of the city are really handling the growth, because some parts of the city are not dealing with the growth the way you guys are. So if this is where City of Miami wants to grow, and I think this is a logical place for it to grow, this is where the highways are, this is where the museums are, this is where the employment is, this is where the transit is, it makes sense, but you need to get a fair deal out of it. I don't know if we need to take another look at that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
This is the last question. We need to adjourn.
Yeah, I understand. I think the growth part is,
Won't be here.
it's the how we're growing that feels.
Responsible construction and how we manage our buildings.
So after we finish, we'll have some of the words.
Okay, I have a quick comment and a question for you, Commissioner Pardo. Oh, sorry, April, I live in the 1800 Club, and I've been a big advocate in the community for a lot of the overdevelopment, especially petitions on the Edge House. So just so everyone knows here, very quickly, Edgewater is slated for over 100 new buildings over the course of a number of years. That's 100 more buildings to meet this double density of 150 to 300. And so, Commissioner Pardo, when you ran for commissioner, I have your flyer from a couple of years ago. You ran against overdevelopment. So my question to you is, what has changed?
I am against poor development, and we've rejected plenty of projects that no one ever really finds out. So what I am in favor of is smart development, like what we have been describing. The program we just discussed has no one so far in it. Nobody has turned on the switch, nor do we expect a rush of people trying to capture this tool that's being put out there. But I'm going to let you talk a little bit about it as far as the rest of the city.
You mentioned the 100 new buildings. I actually do see all the applications coming in, and I don't, will there be 100 new buildings built eventually? I'm sure there will. Do I have 100 before me now? No, I do not. What's the other part of the question?
That was actually in a meeting, I think down at the Adrian Arts Center about a year ago, about the plans and being slated for that many new buildings that were coming up in Edgewater. I didn't say today or tomorrow, right? But we have, with the zoning, many new 60-story buildings that are coming up that we're seeing already where they're going in the community.
Yeah. This is a fact. The zoning does allow for these developments to happen, and that goes back to my earlier comment. We need to look at the deal that we're getting here, right? If there's going to be a reform, I personally don't advocate for just stopping development. I think you need to get a better deal out of it. I think that comes from looking at our public benefits trust fund and other programs that we can create to make sure the shape of the growth that we get is in a positive fashion. You mentioned smart growth. The reason I'm an urban planner, the reason I'm down here in Miami, the reason I went to the University of Miami is because I believe in two concepts. It's ideological, it's philosophical. I believe in smart growth as a concept, which is an urban planning term, and I believe in the concept of new urbanism. New urbanism looks to the way cities were built prior to the 1950s, where things were walkable, where you get the mixed use, you get the shop downstairs, you get the apartments above, the buildings come up to the street. So I personally think that's better than a sprawling type of development where everything's car oriented. And that's the problem we're having right now, right? Miami was built, because we were built so late, we weren't built before the night. Most of Miami was not built before the 1950s. We have a lot of other portions of the city where we have our historic portions, but the vast majority of our metropolitan and our city were built post-1950. And that was car-oriented and car-centric. We didn't invest in transit. We didn't invest in bike lanes. We didn't invest in white sidewalks. And now we're suffering for it. Because now we realize, oh my God, we can't stop the growth, but oh my God, everybody's doing things by a car. And so now we're in this transition stage, right? How do we change the development to not be everything to be car? And I'm not against cars. You know, it's a reality. We all need cars. But do you need to have a car for every single trip? You think of the soccer mom. That's a United States phenomenon we call it the soccer mom. That the mom has to shuttle the child at every single thing everywhere. And then that comes with traffic, right? So we as a community need to think about how do we encourage mixed use so I can just get my basic needs in my community a 5-minute walk away. How can the park that I want to go to be 5 minutes away? How can the plaza be 5 minutes away? How can the school be a 10-minute safe ride for my child so that I don't have to drive them there and they can be a safe community, not dangerous, crime infested, that there's not going to be homeless people on the way harassing, attacking. We have to change how we grow. And I think that's what we really need to be looking at and challenge ourselves to. Are we getting the right deal? And is it growing in the way that we want it to grow? And I think that's where the zoning code gives you the power to look at these reforms.
Yeah, so with that, I want to thank them.
Yeah, I also just want, I do just really want to thank you. You know, this has been really long and there's been a lot of information. And I just really want a heartfelt thanks for being here and staying here. And hopefully we continue this engagement. It shouldn't end here. This shouldn't be the end of it. Please reach out to us, reach out to Bradley, reach out to our office. We rely on you. You're our partners. In fact, we couldn't have passed this legislation were it not for about 20 property owners, the BNA, and residents. The people that opposed this legislation were not in it. So it's important. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you, all of you for attending and hanging in there. Last word I will say, if you haven't done the survey, please do because we want input. We need feedback, and if you've done it, get 3 of your neighbors to fill it out, please. Thank you. Adjourns and drinks out.